Life in his name. We're going to do something that I rarely, if almost ever do. We're going to cover more than one chapter. And when I told some people that this week, they laughed and said, Rich, this is October, not April 1st. You can't fool me. I said, no, really, I am. I'm covering more than one chapter. Fact is, I'm going to finish off John this way. And the reason why I did it is because, like a lot of things that we've hit on while going through John, this is sort of a sandwich situation. You got something happening in the beginning, something happening at the end, and in the middle of it is something that relates to both parts of it. So the first thing we're going to look at is in John chapter 20, verses 24 and 25. And it reads, Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, We've seen the Lord. So he said to them, Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger in the print of the nails, and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. Now, it's interesting because of what we know of Thomas prior to this. He's the one back in John 11:16 that when they're going back to Jerusalem because Lazarus has died, he's the one that says, Let us go with him that we may die with him. He was convinced and convicted, but I believe his conviction was along the lines of belonging. He was one of the ones, as many were, who saw the miracles, who potentially himself performed miracles. But when Jesus died on the cross, his sense of belonging seemed to evaporate completely. The leader of the group isn't with us anymore. He's been killed. And if you can kill him, I don't know what to believe anymore. And looking back at it, we can say, Thomas, that's a little bit wishy-washy. Nobody today can miraculously make food appear. Nobody today can miraculously raise someone who's been dead and in the grave to the point that, as Jesus was told, Lord, he stinketh. We can't do that today. We don't have those miracles today. We can't have the proof today the way Thomas says, I've got to have it if I'm going to believe. There's a problem with the faith Thomas had at this time. Then we have Peter. And Peter's got a couple more passages than Thomas. And so at the end, we're going to look at a couple more passages. Looking at verse 3 of chapter 21, it says, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, We're going with you also. They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Jumping down to 7. This is after Jesus tells them to cast the net on the other side, and they catch a bunch. Verse 7 says, Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. I'm going to hold off on reading 15 through 17. But in looking back at Peter's the one who the first time this happens, when they're out at sea fishing and they've fished all night and caught nothing, and Jesus is in the boat because he's asked them to put out so that he can speak to the crowd that has come. So he's out there in the boat with them, and he tells them, cast your net on the other side. They cast the net and they catch fish to the point the boats are starting to sink. Boats, plural, are starting to sink from the weight of the fish. And Peter's response at that time is, Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. So from the beginning, Peter's got an understanding, an acknowledgement of who Christ was. in chapter 14 of Matthew, 26 through 34. That's when Christ comes to them walking on the water at night. It's a storm. And at first they're afraid. They think it's a ghost. And Christ says to him, "It's me." And Peter says, "If it's you, call to me that I may come out and walk on the water to you." Peter gets out and actually walks on the water for a time, until he recognizes all the nasty going on around him and he starts to sink. "Lord, save me." Peter was the one who got out of the boat and for a time had the faith to walk on water. Peter's also the one in chapter 16 who acknowledges, "You are the Christ." When Christ says, "Who do people say that I am?" "Oh, you're a prophet," or "You're this," or "You're that." "Who do you say that I am?" "You are the Christ, the Son of God." Again, Peter's got that deeper understanding, that deeper kind of conviction of who Christ is. But then we start to see the other part of this. Because in the same chapter, shortly after he said, "You're the Christ," he rebukes Christ. And what did Jesus finish telling him? "I'm going. They are going to kill me, and I will rise in 3 days." "Lord, you are so not getting killed. This is not the plan I got into." He didn't say that last part. He just tells him, "This isn't happening." And Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan. This is a temptation I don't need right now. Stop it." Then in chapter 17, Peter is one of the ones who is there on the mountain for the transfiguration. He sees Moses. He sees Elijah. He sees Jesus. All three together. And he's the one, "Lord, let's build a temple for each one of you." The cloud covers him. A voice from heaven. "This is my son, whom I'm well pleased. Hear ye him." And the only one left is Jesus. And then on the night when Jesus is betrayed by Judas, Peter's the one who pulls out the sword and goes swinging. And okay, two things you got to understand about it. One, type of sword, bigger knife. Bigger knife that's probably close to the same size as what the Romans used as a sword. The way he's using it. Shorter sword is not a slash, cut somebody into kind of weapon. It's a stab 'em thing. Peter cuts off an ear. Peter didn't know how to use that weapon to kill. He was going to do the best he could, fighting for the Son of God, but then also being the one who's going to deny him 3 times. Peter had his own concept of what the Son of God was supposed to be. He was looking to be on that winning side because for him, the Son of God was going to overcome Rome. It was going to be the next David. And he wanted to be on that side. And when it wasn't that, he got confused and went fishing. Because, well, we're not winning the way I thought we're supposed to be winning. He's resurrected. And he believes that. And even believing in the resurrection, it's time to go fishing. Now, in the middle of both of those, between Thomas's faith and Peter's faith, we have this verses 30 and 31 of chapter 20. "And truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." And now there's two things being said here. The first one, believe. Many things that aren't written in this book were done that you may believe. Thomas saw it, believed for a time, but it wasn't enough. Seeing a miracle wasn't enough. Peter saw it, believed it as long as it fit the narrative he desired. And when that wasn't the narrative, that belief crumbled. And if we were to turn to Matthew 8, 28 and 29, we find out it's not just people who believe. The demons that are being cast out, that will end up going into swine and jumping off a cliff, knew you are the Christ, the Son of God. Even demons believe the facts. But there's a second part to this. And that is, in believing, you may have life in his name. Believing is not just a head thing. Because if all it was a head thing, the demons are so there. Thomas was so there. Peter was so there. And yet, we know at the end of John, they're not really there. And we know the demons really aren't there. Because like I said, this is a two-parter. John wrote that people could believe. John's actually writing not just so that people who didn't know could believe. He's writing to people like Thomas, to people like Peter, who had a belief but need a better understanding, to be able to be believing that they may have life in his name. Let's look now at 21 verses 15 through 17. And, all right, this is one of the few times I'm going to say translation counts. If you go to the Old King James, you're not going to find it. If you go to some of the other translations, you're not going to find it. In the New King James, it says, "So when they had eaten breakfast," that's the fish that he just caught, "Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Feed my lambs.' He said to him again a second time, 'Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Tend my sheep.' He said to him a third time, 'Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?' Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, 'Do you love me?' And he said to him, 'Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you.' Jesus said to him, 'Feed my sheep.'" All right. Knowing Greek helps this time especially. In the New King James, we do get to see some of the wordplay going on, but again, it helps to know what's really, really being said. So when Jesus says, "Do you love me more than these?" what had Peter gone back to? His job. Peter was the son of a fisherman. His dad was the one who owned the business. These are Dad's boats. They're going out in Peter's future. And when it doesn't fall out the way he expects it to fall out, he goes back to it. So when Jesus is saying, do you love me more than these? Are you convinced and convicted? Are you investing in me? Because the word there is agape. And that's one of three types of love that you encounter in the Greek. Agape is an investment love. It's like the teddy bear. When you get the teddy bear as a little kid, and the teddy bear is all nice, fuzzy, and has the shiny eyes and so forth, and the nose is still there and all that, cool beans. It's a very lovable teddy bear because it's cute and adorable, and it's stuffed with fluff. And you can sleep on it, or lean on it, or whack your brother or sister over the head and not get too much trouble because it's soft and fluffy. And then 6 or 7 or 8 years out, teddy bear is missing quite a bit of fluff. Sort of sags instead of having a puffy belly. Teddy bear might have one of its eyes missing because, well, you don't treat it quite the way you should, and you drag it along and it rubs up against things and the eyeball falls off. And maybe one of the arms is sort of limp or maybe not quite attached any longer. And some of the fluff is worn off the top of it. So it's not quite as cute and adorable any longer. But the child still loves that teddy bear. Why? Because they've invested in the teddy bear. Does it have the same lovable qualities that it had when they first got it for Christmas or a birthday? No. What's the quality it has? It has the quality of love invested. And it could be 20 years later. If you pulled out that teddy bear 20 years later, 9 times out of 10, the response is go, oh! And they'll name off that bear. Because it was the bear that got them through when they were upset sometimes. It was the bear that they would talk to when they didn't feel anybody else was going to listen. It was the bear that meant something, not because it was still cute, adorable, and fluffy, but because of what they had invested in that bear. Jesus was saying to him, you know what work will get you. Are you willing to invest in me? And unfortunately, Peter's response was, Lord, you know you're cute, adorable, and fluffy. The word there, phileo, is brotherly love, is a love of a quality worth loving. Ice cream. People like to say, I love ice cream. I love, and you name off the food. And what they're really saying is that food has a quality I enjoy and benefit from. I enjoy the taste of ice cream. And if you don't believe that, you should see me on Second Sunday Sundays, when my Sunday's about that tall. Yes, I like ice cream a great deal. It has a quality I enjoy. It's got something I benefit from. And Peter's response to Jesus was, Lord, you know I benefit from, I like you. Feed my lambs. Or actually, tend my lambs. And the word that's there, tend, and tends to get translated feed often, is a word that means pasture. And from a shepherd's perspective, that means more than just give them food. When you pasture the lambs, for starters, the word lambs is there. It's lambs, little ones, not sheep, but the younger ones. Provide them the place that is safe, secure, that has what they need to grow. And if you know anything about sheep versus cattle, sheep don't eat nicely. When they grab at the grass, their teeth are a pincher kind of thing. And they grab down at the bottom and they rip it all out. And I really mean rip it out. It doesn't just get the top of the grass, it pulls out the roots and everything else as well. That's why cattlemen hated them in the United States early on. They'd go out and kill the sheep. They'd kill the shepherds sometimes because they were destroying the pasture. You got to be on the move with sheep, because you can't have them pasture in one spot only. They're going to destroy it. So you pasture here for a day, and then you move them over a little bit. And you pasture there, and you move them over a bit, and you pasture them there. You have to, as the shepherd, when tending the sheep, it's a constant action. You are looking at what's going on and saying, okay, if I leave them here, it's all going to be a nasty little pile of dust, because they're going to destroy it. Tend my lambs means paying attention to what's there, that they're able to be fed, that they're able to have water to drink, that they're in that safe environment when they don't know any better because they're only lambs. And then Christ asks him a second time, Peter, are you investing in me with your love? And a second time, Peter says, Lord, you know you're a really cool guy and I like you a lot. And hanging out with you is great because you're the one who's the Son of God. I get something out of this. And then Christ responds differently. He doesn't tell him, tend my lambs. And I should open this up and make sure I get it right. Second time, he says, tend my sheep. So, first one's a pasturing. The second one is shepherding. So the first word's founded in that thing that's done. The second word is found in what you are and are to be doing. It means to shepherd the sheep. Who's the shepherd? The one who goes before. The one who finds that right place. The one who makes sure that there's food there. But it's more than that. Because the shepherd protects those sheep. Defends them from things that would harm them. It's not just about getting them the good they need to grow. It's about protecting them from the evil that can harm them. He's telling them, first off, invest. Do you invest in me? I'm asking you then to invest in those who are growing up in the Lord. Are you investing in me? I'm asking you to shepherd those who are in the Lord. And then the last one, Jesus backs it down. Peter, am I the likable guy? Is there something about me that you think is good? And Peter's hurt because one, it's the third time, but two, Jesus backed it down. You know all things. And the truth is, Jesus knew where Peter wasn't at yet. Tend my sheep. So now the first one was tend, pasture the little ones. Now it's pasture the flock. Jesus is letting Peter know in a subtle way, I'm asking of you. I am telling you what that investment of love is I desire from you. And here's where that believing takes action. Because he's not asking him, just like me. He's not asking him, just think of me as something like that teddy bear. I'm asking you to invest. I am asking you to commit. I am asking for a belief that's more than up here. That it becomes who you are. And jumping back to John chapter 1, that one says, and I am not working well with my pages. There we go. John chapter 1, 4 and 5. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not comprehend it. And right there, Peter still isn't getting it because it's not what he's looking for. He's not yet looking for what Christ came for. That's going to happen, but it hasn't happened at the end of the book of John. Peter is still in the process of growing and isn't ready to comprehend the love of God. He's so ready for the might of God to make things right Peter's way. In a world controlled by a Rome, Peter thinks the only way it can all be good is if it's no longer Rome's way, but my definition of what's right. Sound familiar? If the world is going Donald Trump's way, I don't want to be a part of it, blah, 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 blah. Or if you're on the other side, if the world is going Joe Biden's way, I don't want to blah, 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 blah. Forget about both sides, because both sides are wrong. It's not about Joe and it's not about Trump. It's about God's way. Now, this all began with life in his name. We don't quite work the same way we used to, vocabulary-wise. But I think most of us are old enough to remember older cop shows. And what was the thing that they always yelled? They draw out the gun. Stop or halt in the name of the law. Not because I'm a badge man. Not because I'm holding a gun at you. Not because I'm going to shoot you. Halt in the name of the law. And what they meant was halt because everything that is guiding our lives as citizens of the United States, as citizens in this county, says you have done wrong. Stop because the law has authority. Not me, not the gun, not the badge, the law. Halt in the name of the law and all that it means. Have life in his name and all that that means. Okay, hang on to that thought because I'm going to give you my own personal side of that. On a personal front, when each of my brothers and my sister and I got married, we started a little family tradition. When the first one got married, that was Mark, we gave him a warning ahead of time so she had the appropriate amount. She had to give us a quarter because she was taking on the name of Kelley. And 25 cents doesn't seem a lot. Well, we didn't want to break her. It was a token. It was an understanding. You're taking on a name. This name means something. There's a cost. It means you are living up to that name that you're taking. Live it that way. So when Vicki married me, she gave my brothers a quarter. When Scott got married, his wife to-be gave us a quarter. When Linda took on the last name of Baker, Scott, Mark, and I each gave Mike a quarter. And we said we take this very seriously, that our sister is willing to take on your last name. We take this very seriously. We're three guys and we're all bigger than you, buddy. A little bit of a joke there. He's a police officer. So, the name. The name that you wear should mean something. When you're in the U.S. Army, it means something. You represent the entirety of the United States, almost on and off duty 24/7. People look to that name. You're a soldier. It means a lot of something. When you're a police officer, it means a lot of something. When you're a fireman, it means a lot of something. When you're a Christian, it should carry the same amount of baggage and even more as to what it means. In John 1, 4, and 5, it gives us the why of why we're doing it. And we're doing it in His name. And unfortunately, what it says in verses 4 and 5 are true. The world doesn't get it. And that's okay. Okay from the standpoint, that shouldn't change how we choose to act. Fact is, if the world got it, you have to start to question, how come they're able to get it if they're that messed up? Or am I not really living up to that name? In Matthew 7, 13 and 14, and we'll go ahead and read that passage. This is the passage talking about narrow is the gate. Beginning in 13, it says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." And that word find means to seek by inquiry, thought, or examination, or better, to find by practice and experience. Peter and Thomas both had sought. Peter recognized, I am not worthy of being with you. I am a sinful man. Depart from me, Lord. But Peter and Thomas also knew when called, yes, this is the man to follow. They were beginning the process of learning and growing. But even after 3 years, they were still sort of lambs. Because what they had practiced to this point was that love that says, yeah, you're a nice fluffy teddy bear, and I'm good with this. This is the crowd I want to hang with because he's the Son of God. I'm good with this. That's not what we're called to do. We're called to live a life like Christ. That's why we're called Christians. Because we're called to live a life that is investing, not because investing in people is the great thing, but because investing because it's what God has asked of us. That's the great thing. Because at that point in time, it doesn't matter that the person I do something good for didn't appreciate it. Pay somebody's electric bill. Well, I didn't get food. And yeah, there are people out there that will throw that attitude. Spent $200 and the only thing for thanks is, and I didn't get. Yeah. Because there's that expectation in the world of, well, until I've got all the goodies, it's not good enough. So, yeah, sort of thanks, but if I'm doing it for them, how good am I feeling at the end of it? Not so hot. Because they didn't appreciate what I did. How many times are you going to keep on doing stuff that's unappreciated? If the reason you're doing it for is because, well, I'm doing good for somebody, and how good was it if they didn't like it? It's hard to keep doing it that way. Fact is, I've known ministers who've left the pulpit for that very reason. Their reason for getting up and doing it every Sunday, every Wednesday, was because they knew they were helping people. And they could tell that by the way they responded to them. And as we all know, how many positives does it take to overcome a negative? Something like 7 to 10. So if catching too many negatives happens, it doesn't matter that you're doing more positive than negative. The man was preaching for over 30 years and finally decided, I just don't feel it anymore. And I caught him when he was teaching a Wednesday night class, and I was thankful. Because I told him, okay, I hear what you're saying. And there were other people that were amen in what he was saying about how burnt out they felt. I said, folks, we're doing it for the wrong reason if we're doing it because it helps people. I don't ever do it because it helps people as being my primary reason for doing it. I do it because I'm called by God. Do all as unto the Lord. When I help somebody, whether they thank me or not, I'm doing it because that's what I'm called to do. If I am helping clean up somebody's yard because that person is responsible for benevolence and it happens to be one of their clients, I'm not second guessing that it was because it was his client. I'm not second guessing his motive. If the person needs a yard cleaned and I'm asked to do it, I'm doing it not because of how right I think the situation is, but because in helping somebody, I am doing and showing the love of God. Period. End of statement. I don't have to qualify it by how thankful somebody is. I don't have to qualify it by how right it is. If I'm doing good, I'm acting on what God has called me to do. In His name. Not in gratitude, not in indebtedness to somebody, but because, just like you'll hear regularly from me about my gratitude towards my parents, I'll tell you right now what I'm doing. I'm giving an example to my kids. I'm giving an example to my kids about how they're to respond to their parents. Because if they can see that, they can better understand it when I'm talking about their spiritual parent. Pull all of this together. In John 3:21, earlier part of the book, it said, "But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen, that they may be done in God." We do the works of truth in God. In whose name? Christ, as Christians. And Hebrews is like it, except it carries it farther along with the definition, the definition that I read just a little bit ago. Hebrews 5:14. "But solid food belongs to those who are of full age, that is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern good and evil." Peter wasn't there yet. Thomas wasn't there yet. They were doing the easy, but hadn't learned the struggle of the hard. Because they were belonging. They were seeking for themselves. And that wasn't what it was about. What they needed to learn and understand, that they were given an understanding of by Pentecost, was it's not about being a good person. And yes, I've known people that went to church not because they believed in Christianity, but because they wanted their kids to be good people. So you take your kids to church so they'll grow up to be good people. No God to that at all. It's not about being the good person. It's about the God who showed His love from the beginning. About the God who made it all good from the beginning. About the God who, before the laying of the foundation, planned out the rescue for man, acted in love, knowing we would choose sin over obedience to him. Mark 1:3, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make ready the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. The way. That's what they were called first. You were a member of the way. It was a division of Judaism because the world didn't understand it. They understood Judaism, and these people were still working from that same text, so obviously they're still Jews. They just follow the way. If you're following it, are you standing still in it? No, you're moving. We don't become a Christian and stand there accomplished. We're called to do. Having life in his name isn't saying, I took him on in baptism. I was buried with him in the watery grave that represents his death, burial, and resurrection. I'm done. I'm now a Christian. Could you get away with that as far as being a police officer? Okay, I've got the uniform on, I've got the badge, I'm done. Oh, no, you got to go out and do. No. I don't have to go out and do. I'm done. We get that it doesn't cut it for a police officer. You have to go out and live the life in a way you are called to do by the duty you've committed to, by taking on that badge, taking on that uniform. Just like we wouldn't accept it in a marriage. The certificate signed, I said I do, my part's done. I'm now your spouse. Well, yes, that means, no, I'm done. It's on my name. That's a worthless name if that's all there was to it. In name, all that it incorporates. Being a Christian incorporates a whole lot. Or at least it may. Because the verse that we read, that this has all been branching off from, believing you may have life in his name. If the believing stops here, the may is, well, you may have had the opportunity, but if you did nothing with it, you did nothing with it. Believing and acting, you've now moved from the I'm not going to move forward, I'm standing in the way, to I am walking in the way. Christ gave us an example from beginning to end. He showed love and respect even to his earthly parents. Mary says, turn it into wine. I shouldn't say turn it into wine. She says they got a problem. I'm telling you, they need it fixed. And he does. Because she was his mother. And that meant something. It meant something to show respect, to show honor. Not because she was necessarily the greatest mom in the world, but because you show honor and respect to your parents, period. And because of that, we look at that and say, yeah, that was doing good. Scripture even tells us, children, obey your parents. That's Old Testament. That you may have long life. Life. We're back on that same topic. Obey. Doing something. Using the knowledge you get from here in your daily walk in such a way that it reflects back upon the one that you're walking for. we live the life in Him, in His name, and all that means. And I'm just now thinking of a different passage, and I'm going to say it's probably out of Hebrews, where it talks about in the final days, there will be many families, one name, because that's the name that counts. We're called to believe in His name. It's more than just taking Him on in baptism and becoming a Christian. It's about that ongoing state of becoming more and more. Just like in marriage, we want to grow more and more in love of God. We want to grow more and more and more in our commitment, in our love, in our dedication. You can keep going there. We'll close with this one. Matthew 22:16. Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth. And defer to no one, for you are not partial to any. The reason why He wasn't partial to any is because it wasn't about the any as far as what He was doing. Yes, it would accomplish much for all. He was the price for sin for all. But the standard He was living by wasn't to make anybody feel comfortable by what He did. The standard He lived by was the standard God Himself set. When He came, everything He did, He pointed back to the Father in reverence, in respect and love. He gave the example all the way because He came to make Himself the Son of God. And He did, by His actions, by His love. We have the opportunity always to first off take on Christ in baptism, to be taking on that name, but also every day we have the opportunity to become more the child of God He's called us to be, to make ourselves more the Christian He has called us to be.